And Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Good Monday morning, Amy Jacobson here. John Anthony in for Dan Proft. Thanks for being here, partner. Love it as always.
Yes, having a good time.
And I'm punching you up on the FaceTime so I can see
There we go. I got you.
I don't know if you heard on Friday, there was a letter sent out to members of, to lawmakers, people, our betters, warning them about an unsecure border. And it came from 10 retired FBI agents. And if you read the whole letter, did you read part of it, John?
I read some of it.
And it'll put a chill through your spine because we are obviously a soft target, and known terrorists on terror lists have crossed over. And do you remember this guy, Middle Eastern man, entitled, arrogant? His response, because reporters always ask people, de donde eres, where are you from, where are you going? And this was his response.
If you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're going to know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
The entitlement, guys. Wow.
And I'm not going to try and pronounce his first name, but
Musvat.
What's his name?
Musvat, I was told.
Musvat. Okay, well, he just got out of jail, spent 12 years in prison. And what did he spend time in jail for, John Anthony?
Yeah, he was basically a terrorist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrorism.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the kind of people that we're letting into this country. And kudos to these 10 FBI agents who warned of what could happen, that we're a soft target. There could be a 10-7 style of attack. And one of the people who signed the letter is former Chicago Police Superintendent Jody Weis, also retired special agent in charge at the Philadelphia Federal Bureau of Investigations. Good morning, Mr. Weis. How are you?
Good morning, Amy. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining us. How did this letter come together?
The several members of that group, we were talking about this, Mark Morgan, Kevin Brock, Chris Schwecker, and myself. We just saw this happening, which none of us have any recollection of this happening in our lifetimes and in modern history. And Kevin Brock said, we should do something about this. And I said, why don't we write a letter? It can't hurt. And I said, let's get some people together. So Kevin was good enough to author the letter with some input from myself, Mark, Chris, and some of the other guys. And we just wanted to put our opinion out that this is, I think, extremely dangerous right now, what we're facing, because there's just so many military-age men that we know nothing about. And it's the unknown, Amy, that, in my opinion, is so dangerous. We have no idea what so many of these individuals are up to, but here they are in the United States. And the person you just shared earlier, how many more are like him? We don't know what they're going to do, but he wants to make sure that we'll know him in the future by doing what? And that's what we don't know.
Yep. And do you fear, though, a 10-7 style attack?
I do, only because of the copycat nature of things. But I'll tell you what I really am afraid of. Back in 2002, I saw where Maryland, the district, and Virginia were literally shut down by two guys who had no terrorism intention whatsoever. They were looking to just commit murder, and actually to hide the murder of the one individual's ex-wife in with the others. But two people in an old car with a cheap rifle shut down Maryland, the district, and Virginia. So just think, if you had operations like that in a dozen cities in the United States, what would that do to our country? It would terrify people. And I was there working that case. People were shutting down. They were afraid to get gas in the cars. Gas stations were putting up tarps to give people at least some concealment. People were running zigzag patterns to go to grocery stores. And it was shocking what those two individuals did, and it was because of the randomness of their attack. So when I saw that firsthand, I'm looking at these individuals. What is it, 1.8 million gotaways? We have no idea what they're up to. And that's what frightens me. And, of course, duplicating October 7th. Think of all the great events that Chicago has. Any one of those could be a target like that. And again, we just don't know.
That's true. Yeah, how you doing, sir? When you look at this invasion that's happening in our country, and then you see a lot of places, especially I'll speak specifically to Illinois, that are going after your 2A, your gun rights. I mean, at a time when we are setting up people coming in our country, invading us, why do you think they're going after our Second Amendment right? Basically making people who are law-abiding citizens in this state specifically to make them criminals to not defend their homeland against something like this invasion we see. And I got a J6 question with the FBI I want to ask you after that question.
Okay, well, you know what? It just seems to be a lot of people on the left that think that taking weapons away from law-abiding citizens is going to keep everybody safe. That nothing could be farther from the truth. What you need to do is keep guns out of the hands of people that can harm themselves or harm others. And there are ways to do that. Could we do a much better job? Of course. But focusing on the weapon, I think that's really misguided. We have people that should never have been able to purchase a weapon at a certain time. Those are the people we need to focus on. Let's put processes in place that would keep that from happening. Because there are some people, I'm a huge Second Amendment fan, but there are people who should not be armed for whatever reason at that time, and they're a threat to themselves as well as to the community.
Yeah, and when you served in the FBI, when you look at what I believe they've fallen from grace. How they came after President Trump, and now we're learning that might have been assets from the FBI, which is normal. That's what happens to any police. I'm a former cop myself. So I know sometimes we would dress up and go into parties and things of that nature just to make sure things didn't get out of hand. But when you look at it, when the FBI director, Christopher Wray, basically said, he lied, basically. What has become of the Federal Bureau of Investigations? And what should we do to fix the issues that are at hand with it?
John, that is a question. I mean, thank you for asking it, but that is a question a lot of our retired guys and gals ask ourselves every day. I think the Bureau has really lost its way. When I see some of the things that they've done, we would never have done something like that. And you raised a good point. You look at January 6th, when the director refuses to admit that there's any resources that might have been in the crowd. We did, when I was the superintendent of Chicago Police Department at the Taste, we put a lot of undercover officers in with the crowd to try to determine if there were anything bad going on and to get the instigators out right away.
Yep.
And it's a common tactic. So it begs the question, why can't you say that? And they hide behind this nonsense, I think, of, sources and methods, and these are informants. All you want to know, I think the American public deserves an answer, like, did you have resources?
Like Ray Epps. Who is Ray Epps?
If you had him there, why did this get so out of control? You look at there's so many questions that need to be answered. I watch it every time I see those tapes, John. I see that short cop opening the barricades and waving people in. Now, who would do that?
Yeah.
There might be a legitimate reason. I can't think of one, but I'd love to ask him, say, hey, why did you do that, my brother? Because it makes no sense to open the barricades and wave people in. So there's just a lot of questions I think the American public certainly has a right to know, and I think demand to know from what I used to consider the premier law enforcement agency in the world. I sadly, after 23 years, I don't consider that anymore.
Wow. Well, how do you get your reputation back?
Hard work, Amy. You just got to go in. I think there's got to be a massive changeover in personnel. I think it's got to be very vocal. I was disappointed with Christopher Wray. I thought Comey was a disaster. I thought Christopher Wray had a great opportunity to come in and just clean house, change things, be very vocal, tell the American people what he's doing every day to start restoring that trust and confidence. Sadly, he's just falling into the bureaucratic trap of just, answering as little as he can and just sitting back, and that's disappointing. It's going to take a real leader to, I think, bring the FBI back to the prominence that it had years ago. It's going to be quite a task.
So let's go back to the border issue. 2 questions. What do you think of what Governor Abbott is doing? He's holding the line. And also, what keeps you up at night?
Good question.
Well, I really like Governor Abbott's position. I mean, he sadly is trying to do the job that the U.S. government is refusing to do. And I admire his resolve. I admire his creativity to try to use the National Guard and other measures to try to keep his state safe. He has an obligation to do that. And it's a sad day when he's doing it simply because the federal government is not doing their job in enforcing laws that are already on the books. There doesn't need to be any new laws passed. Just do your job, enforce the laws. And it's what keeps me up at night. I keep going back to what I shared earlier, that those small two-man teams operating in multiple cities. We first saw that in Mumbai years and years ago, and we saw it in D.C. And you just look at that when you see it firsthand, the terror that caused. And let's keep in mind, those guys had no intent to cause terror. They had no intent to cause social or political change. They just wanted to kill one individual's ex-wife and hide it amongst the other murders. But the randomness of that, we have there over 400 law enforcement people there. We just kept thinking, what if this was happening in multiple cities? How would we respond to it? And thank God it was just in that city. But if you went there with the intent to cause terror and havoc and chaos in multiple cities at once, I think it would overload the law enforcement, and it would just, I think it could shut this country down. So that's what I worry about every day. And I'm not a worrier, but I do worry about that just because of the effectiveness that we saw firsthand in the district in Maryland and Virginia.
Yeah, I want to take you back to Chicago. As your former superintendent, we all know that really it's a you don't really get to make a lot of your own decisions because the fifth floor makes a lot of those decisions in Chicago. But how would you have handled the pedestrians in the roadway just completely shutting down
it's awful.
traffic? I mean, they basically shut down the city in some certain areas when they do this. How would you have handled this as superintendent?
Well, personally, I think I've gotten some very clear direction from then Mayor Daley to make sure these streets are open. I worry about that whenever I see it, John and Amy, because what if somebody has to get to the hospital?
Yeah.
Right away?
Oh, I know. And they're shutting down Lakeshore Drive in both directions for 2.5 hours.
Insane.
And people had to go to work, people had to go to weddings, people had to go to funerals, people had to go to the hospital.
Yep.
And the
Yes,
cops just sat there. The Chicago cops sat there. I was losing my mind.
And see, that is so dangerous because at some point people like yourself are going to get so frustrated. Then you're going to have people start taking matters in their own hand, and then people are really going to start to get hurt.
Yep.
So this is when the cops are going to have to step up, look at ways, try to get some intelligence, who's directing this, and you got to shut this down. And they're going to have to be aggressive. And, you can't allow these soft targets to be. But shutting down roadways like Lakeshore Drive, that's insane in both directions. Totally unacceptable. And you got to fix that.
Yeah. Well, we had they had their own photo op with Superintendent Johnson. So I mean,
oh God! And then they shut down. They shut down I-90 to O'Hare Airport when kids, college kids, were coming home. People are all flying in for Christmas, and that was running up the hill, Mr. Weis, with a Hamas flag. I thought, oh my God! And then they just let them stay there.
Yeah. With the DNC convention coming up, I'm afraid of what we're really. I don't think they've really unleashed their plans. And when I say that, I mean the leftists. I really don't think they unleashed the plans of what they really are going to do in the DNC convention in 2020.
Yeah, like how would you prepare for the DNC now for August if you were still superintendent?
Well, it's going to take everybody working together in a cohesive thing. They'd be starting right now looking at intelligence, trying to find what's going on, keep looking, asking the questions, what's the threat? What's the threat? And just for a moment, I got to touch on the point. How shocking it is to you, as it is to me, that we have people in the United States that are celebrating and protesting for a terrorist group that caused such carnage on 10/7. How is that even possible that we're celebrating a terrorist group? I look at that as like, where has our country gone? Because that stuns me every day. Everybody I speak with is like, how did this happen? How do we recognize and protest for a group of people that killed, raped innocent civilians? I keep looking at that footage where these guys are coming on the hang gliders and just murdering and raping all those young students just enjoying time out at a concert. How do you celebrate someone like that? What is wrong with us?
Well,
evil.
There's a lot wrong. And then kids, I mean, I don't know if you heard about the double shooting in front of Innovations High School on Wabash on Friday. 2:45 in the afternoon, they get out, assassination attempt. They were not an attempt. They assassinated them. 27 bullet casings. They're still on the loose. They haven't found them, which I don't understand. It's crowded. But it's just... And you know what everybody did, Mr. Weis? Instead of applying pressure or CPR, they shot videos of it for their TikToks.
Yep. Yeah.
And the kid was dying. Like you could see his eyes are open, his mouth is open. Where was the humanity? I wanted somebody to hold him and just be with him as he transitioned, let him know that he's loved. And we have forgotten how to be human beings with all this technology and then just lack of respect for police.
Agree on all counts. But something like that is just horrifying. Think how that young man felt, and people are rather videotaping as you're dying. Couldn't somebody go and offer him some comfort? Great point, and very sad. Another testament to how I think the society needs to reset and come back to, I think, where we look at each other as humans and not as potential clickbait for our social media apps.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And where can people find the letter? We'll tweet out the letter that you and 9 other retired FBI agents wrote, because it's good. I mean, I read it twice, and I'm telling you, it sent a chill up my spine. So thank you so much for all the work that you do. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank
and
you, sir.
We look forward to having you on sometime in the near future.
Anytime, Amy. John, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Jody Weis, former superintendent and former special agent, retired at the Philadelphia agency for the FBI, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper, hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Hugh Hewitt for townhall.com. For a few weeks now, a small group of senators have been busy trying to cobble together a bipartisan deal on legislation that would provide aid for Israel, for Ukraine, for Taiwan, and crucially, something for border security. But the deal in the Senate appears dead now. Leader McConnell has said as much. Members of the House, including Speaker Johnson, said dead on arrival. Why? Because it's a terrible deal. It should have been killed on the first day. It would have been a disaster to pass a bill that does not have the step in it of 900 miles of border wall, fully funded and authorized, notwithstanding any other law. But the bill did not have the fence in it. And they've been trying to hide that inconvenient fact since they sat down at the negotiation table.